The year was 1970 when a 37-year-old Southern California transplant from Detroit moved here to San Diego and had a vision. Before 130,000 people showed up to Comic-Con, 300 diehards gathered in the basement of the U.S. Grand Hotel 41 years ago for the very first show.
Shell was a guy who wanted to live on the wild side.
Comic book dealer Terry Stroud says his buddy Shel Dorf waltzed into San Diego and wasn't afraid to dream big.
I think he was influenced by the New York shows.
Shel Dorf was a fierce fan of comic books, so he rallied his closest friends to organize the first Comic-Con in 1970.
This year's conclave has a little of everything to offer, with discussions and exhibits focusing on comic books, comic strips, science fiction, fantasy, and the age of chivalry.
August 1st of 1974, devotees of comic strips and comic books gathered in a convention at El Cortez Hotel, where one of the major attractions was the famous writer, Ray Bradbury. He was one of America's leading science fiction authors, but also a poet, novelist, playwright, essayist, and creator of musical productions. Bradbury was a fan of the comics from his boyhood on. Our Harold Keene asked him if he considered comic books and newspaper comic strips to be genuine American art forms. Bradbury said he was planning to adapt some of his short stories into a comic magazine of his own.
The Parisians and the Italians and the New York intellectuals, with someone as bad as Roy Lichtenstein, who is really a dreadful artist, doing all the worst things. He's imitating the worst comic strips. He has no taste. Are discovering comic strips, you know. So these dumbbells, you know, come along and try to tell us what we knew intuitively when we were children. That this is a loving art form, and it represents the secret wishes of the men and the women who read it.
It opened yesterday, and already it's in high gear. Shel Dorf, founder of the local get-together of comic book buffs, says this week may break all attendance records. Superheroes are everywhere, but so are customers. And that's one major reason for the convention, share and share alike. For a profit, of course. If a 1946 issue of Donald Duck in fine condition can bring $150, it's only natural that the first Donald Duck comic drawn by artist Carl Bark in 1942 would go for just $850. Customers and dealers stress age and condition. It's almost like being at a stamp collector's convention. There's even a catalog, and books are rated good, fine, or mint. And that could push the price from $350 to $900. Captain Kirk and Dr. Spock are big as life, and the rest of the crew abounds on buttons, magazines, newspapers, even books. There's something for everyone who's ever read a comic book, from big little books of the 30s to Superman that still ranks #1 today. The chance to buy vintage comic books. Those that appeared first back in the late 30s are considered from the golden age. They command prices from $100 to several $1,000s. Price jumps sharply for the August 1939 edition of Action Comics, $700. Throughout the exhibit sales area, a number of slideshows tell the story of comic strips, their creators, and characters. Ernie Chan draws Conan the Barbarian. A self-taught artist, Chan says comics are popular because of the variety of subjects they present, and it's a fun experience. Convention organizers agree that science fiction has given comics a shot in the arm, and Star Wars made moviegoers stop to buy comics of the same name. But it's the fun of real space characters and toy ones that captures the imagination of all ages. Jim Gordon, News 8, the Community Concourse.